I'd been working as caretaker at the local high school for just over 6 months when the following events happened. I'd been asked to work late, as the local scouts group were using the sports hall for a meeting room. It was around 10 o'clock when everyone finally left and I was able to do my usual checks before I locked up, starting with the science lab. I gradually made my way past a row of classrooms, checking everything was turned off and that all the cupboards and doors were closed. Seeing all the rooms behind me in complete darkness always gave me the chills, but it was nothing I couldn't handle. I was just about to close the door to the girls' changing rooms in the sports block when I heard a noise outside the fire escape door. It sounded like someone was pressing against it and trying to force it open. I quickly took out my mobile phone and called the police. They advised me not to engage with whoever it was, and to make sure all the doors were locked and that they'd send someone over. I wasn't sure how long I'd have to wait locked inside, so I decided to make a noise and try and scare them away. I picked up a plastic chair with thin metal legs and dropped it so it made a loud banging noise. Then I raised my voice and pretended I was talking to someone. My plan seemed to work because whoever it was had stopped trying to force the door and everything went quiet. Even though I felt extremely nervous, I walked almost the full length of the school to check if the main doors were still locked. I then sat in my office with the lights on and waited for the police to arrive. I'd also left several lights on nearby so I could see along the corridor clearly. A few minutes later, the police showed up and 2 uniformed officers searched the grounds before I let them in through the main doors. It took them around 20 minutes or so to search the premises, but they found nothing out of the ordinary. I felt relieved, but that didn't take away what I'd heard and how terrified I was. One of the officers suggested it might have been kids messing about and chancing their luck. I thanked them and let them out. They waited in the patrol car whilst I locked up and walked over to my car. After watching them drive away, I took a last look around out the window of my car before driving home. The next day, I checked the outside of the girls' changing room fire escape door and saw a few light scratches about halfway up that I don't remember seeing before. There was also an empty Coke bottle stood neatly against the wall near to the door, which I thought was unusual. I thought no more about it and carried on with the rest of my day as usual. Later that night, I did my usual rounds, starting with the science block as usual, and then made my way down the long corridor of classrooms. I started to feel a slight feeling of dread wash over me as I approached the girls' locker room and tried to shake it off. But just as I was about to open the door, I heard a dull thumping sound coming from inside. I froze, even though I'd already pulled the handle down. I wasn't sure what to do. Either I let the handle go and run, or open the door and confront them. I have no idea why, but I instinctively swung open the door and turned on the light as quick as I could. My heart was pounding and my hands were visibly shaking. There was no one in there, but I still checked behind the lockers just to be on the safe side. Then I heard the same dull thud as I'd heard before, but this time it was coming from behind me. I turned quickly to see the fire escape door open a few inches, then close again, making that same thumping sound I'd been hearing. I could see that it had been forced open. A slow breeze opened the door again and then let it close. I ran out the changing room and locked it, realizing that I might be locking whoever came in the fire escape door inside the main building with me. I ran along a corridor that would eventually lead to my office. I was about 2/3 of the way when I heard what sounded like a corridor door swing open behind me. It was an unmistakable creaking sound that some of the doors made throughout the school. My blood ran cold. I was too scared to turn and see if anyone was coming after me, so I ran faster. I decided not to go to my office and instead ran as fast as I could towards the main doors. I managed to call the police at the same time and told them what was happening. When I got to the main doors, I clumsily tried forcing the wrong key into the lock, causing me to drop them. I picked them up quickly and tried to compose myself as best I could, making sure I used the right key this time. I unlocked the door and ran outside, leaving the keys hanging in the lock. I continued to run towards the middle of the car park under the floodlights so I could see all around. I called my husband and told him to come down as soon as he could. I could hear sirens in the distance. I then noticed the lights go out in one of the classrooms I hadn't had time to check. There was definitely someone in there. The police arrived soon after. I told them about the fire escape door and the lights in the classroom going out. I stood and watched them both enter the building. My husband then arrived in his car and got out to comfort me. A second police car arrived shortly after, which I thought was strange. Me and my husband watched two more uniformed officers rush into the building. A few minutes or so later, all four police officers walked out of the building together. Two of them were leading a fifth man in handcuffs. He was dressed in dark-colored jeans and a gray hoodie. He looked at me for a moment and smiled. It sent shivers down my spine. He didn't look very old and looked to be in his late teens. One of the policemen came over and told us they'd found him hiding in one of the stock rooms next to the classroom, where I'd seen the light go out, and said that I'd had a lucky escape. That's when we noticed that the fourth police officer was carrying a beaten-up old rucksack in one hand and a meat cleaver sealed in an evidence bag in the other. I was horrified at the thought of what he might have done to me. My husband held me tighter and told me everything was going to be okay. My husband took me to the police station the following day to make a full statement. After I'd finished, the detective told me just how lucky I'd been. He showed me an itinerary list that they'd found in his pocket when they searched him. It had a list of teachers' and pupils' names on it, written in blue ink. Some of the names had red crosses after them. My name was also on the list with a question mark after it. I took that to mean that, although I might not have been a target, he probably would have killed me if I'd tried to stop him or got in his way. The man never gave a reason as to why he was in the school, or what he intended to do. I assumed he was an ex-pupil who had a grievance with the school and some of the teachers like you so often read about in the papers. I left my job soon after. Never again would I take another job where I'd be working late at night on my own.